I need to be honest with you guys. I feel like I have not been fully honest with everything that's going on with this podcast. I feel like in 2025, I have really let God down. I feel like I have not done this podcast justice, or at least what God wanted me to do with it. I feel like over the summer, He really hit me hard by just really telling me that I have not stewarded everything that He's given me with this podcast. Just for, I guess, context, I feel like when I launched this podcast in 2024, He gave me a lot of big name people, like episodes, like people to come on my podcast, in studio, things like that. And I just feel like I never did anything with it. Of course, some of it was like tech issues. My hard drive that all the files were on got corrupted. I had to send it in. It was a whole tech thing. And even editing the episodes with the audio and the visuals, like multiple cameras, it was just a whole mess. But still, even after that, I just felt like God was like, I gave you this big thing and you did not steward it well. And it's just like, it hits me so hard because for me, not only does it remind me of like the parable of the talents of like stewarding the little things that God gives you, right? So He can give you the next big thing and then the next big thing and the next big thing. But for me, my main thing is not even stewardship, it is faithfulness. Because I feel like when you are faithful, you steward well. And I feel like with this podcast, I was not faithful to God. For whatever reasons, And so I just feel like a lot of things are going to shift in 2026, and I'll share a little bit more about that. But I felt like the reason why I wanted to just share that and be honest with you guys is because maybe even right now, God has asked you to steward something that might feel small, right? Or might feel big. And I want you to just take a moment to just evaluate and say, hey, am I stewarding this well? Am I stewarding this faithfully and obedient according to how God has asked me to steward this? And what's interesting is like, I had a podcast before a couple of years ago and people loved it. So when I stopped, from that moment on, I felt like people were always like, okay, can you have another podcast? Can you have another podcast? Can you have another podcast? When are you going to start a podcast? And so January of 2024, I was like, okay, guys, I'm going to launch another podcast. And before I was using podcasting as a business tool to get clients, right? So in my mind, I'm like, cool, I'm going to do the same thing. But that same time, like a week later, I just felt like God was like, no, that's not what we're doing this time. This podcast is for so much bigger than clients and strategy and making money. I have such a bigger vision and you're on such a bigger mission than just business. And it was interesting because I felt like God showed me this whole vision for that. And then two other people, one was my daughter and someone in our house church had shared with me these big visions, big dreams that they saw that God was sharing with them about my podcast. So it felt very just like confirmation of like, oh my gosh, this podcast is bigger than me. It is not about me. It's not about my clients. It's not about my business. It's not about my growth. It is about a bigger thing that God has for us. And that's why I felt like this podcast is all about impact, stewardship, and mission, helping you to live life well so that you can do business better in those ways, right? Doing business better, like counterculturally, so that you can make a bigger impact, right? And not only that, but be on making the impact that for the kingdom. Are you a woman in ministry, business, or influence who has a deep desire to be in alignment with God so that you can pour from that overflow of peace and joy and true freedom to your community, to your audience, and to the people that God has called you to impact? If yes, I invite you to join us inside of the Overflow Collective. This is a community of women who have a deep desire for deeper intimacy with God so that we can be on mission, stewarding everything that God has given us for His kingdom and in partnership with Him to usher in more heaven here on earth. We are women who want to stop striving so that we can start surrendering and truly experiencing everything that God has for us. If you are just tired of the hustling, the burnout, the misalignment, the overwhelm, the chaos, the anxiety and stress of being in ministry, being in business, being in positions of influence, then I invite you to join us in the Overflow Collective. You can click the show notes, find the description anywhere you're watching or listening to this episode, and I'll see you inside. The kind of impact that God wants you to make, right? Because you're stewarding everything that He gives you well, not just your finances, your time, your energy, your resources, right? And then also being on bigger mission, making an impact by stewarding well, being on bigger mission for everything that God has for you. And so I just felt like that was such a big thing that God had for me. And I knew, and this is a multiple year thing that he had showed me. And so I think maybe, and I'm kind of processing with you guys now, maybe somewhere along the way, my brain told me that, oh, this is a far off thing, so we don't need to do it right now. But what's interesting about goals is whatever you want to happen in 3 years, you need to start doing now. The planning is now, the action is now, so that in 3 years, you're not like, oh, I guess we're here now and I don't have the thing. No, we are doing the things now to prepare the way for that moment where it shows up and we're like, okay, we are here now. We have come to the final destination because we've taken these consistent, faithful actions. And I felt like 2025, I did not do that with the podcast. Just going to be so real and honest. And again, some of it was tech, some of it was habits. But all I know is that my main focus is to be a good steward of everything that God has given me. And I feel like he's given me this platform to do the thing that he has called me to do the things that he wants me to do for everyone who's going to be impacted when they listen to these podcast episodes. And so with that, I want to share another little quick story about just being like a full yes. So over the summer, I think right before summer, I had shared with you guys already that that's what he shared with me of like, you aren't stewarding this thing well. And then over the summer, September comes and he has me launch this membership that I wasn't planning to launch until January. And then for the next 30 days, I opened the doors from that membership, but I felt like God didn't say go. He just said open the doors, but he did not say run. And so for the next 30 days, I'm waiting on God. And then he finally says, okay, you're going to stop all your social media and you're only going to do your podcast. And so what that means is my podcast is only going to be on audio and on YouTube. That's it. I felt like that's what God was saying. That's it. And so for me, I took it as, okay, I'm going to stop my Instagram, but I had 2 Instagrams. I had my main Instagram and then I had my podcast Instagram, which was like 50 people. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to stop using my Instagram and I'm just going to go on my podcast one. So if you guys follow me on there, I transitioned to my podcast one because I was like, well, that's okay. That's okay because I'm not really using social media now. I'm kind of just like sharing like personal updates or things like that. A little bit business, but not really. And then for my 99% of my clients come from Facebook groups. And so I was just like, okay, cool. I'm not going to really use that. But then I so was for like 1 week. And it was so crazy because after that 1 week, God just clearly shut it down. So I use my Facebook profile. It's on a professional setting so that I join Facebook groups, I interact with people, I get clients on there. What is so crazy is that in that week, when he asked me to get off social media, and I didn't, 100% I didn't, something happened with my settings to where I cannot comment in Facebook groups. I could post things, but I cannot comment. And that is, again, the number one way I interact with people and create engagement and create clients, right? And so God clearly shut that down. And it was just like, God was like slamming that door. And I was like, okay, I'm listening now. And even then I felt like, so that was like, I would say like October. And I feel like it still took me 2 months, November and December, to clearly see what I was doing. I was a 99% yes. Because I was still using my podcast Instagram now the way I was using it before for my main profile. And I knew that God was calling me to only be doing my podcast on YouTube. Like, that's it. I knew that's who he's calling me to. And so what I realized the past week was that I was only 99% yes. And I just knew it. And then finally something clicked. And when I had that realization, I had just decided, I was like, yes, I'm going all in the new year. I'm not doing any social media. And so this is kind of like my big announcement for you guys is my social media is still going to be up, but I'm not going to be using it indefinitely. I just decided I'm not going to be on Facebook. I'm not going to be on Instagram. I am going to be on Facebook for like my personal local Facebook groups, right? Like that's very different. Like it's only going to be for those specifically 3 local Facebook groups and that's it. But I'm not going to be using social media for my business anymore, just indefinitely. I don't know. I feel like I will eventually come back to it, but for I don't know, for however long, I just won't be on there. I just not what God is calling me to. And so the second I made that decision, oh my gosh, the relief, the freedom. And it just got me thinking about always, like literally what I teach is like always coming back into alignment with God. Like I talk about, like if God is telling us to go to like in New York and we're in the car, and if we make a right turn when we're supposed to go left, he reroutes us, right? And I felt like I just kept telling myself, no, God, like I'm going left, but I'm like going this left, right? Maybe there's like two forks in the road and there's one going right. And I'm like, but I am going left, God, but I was not going the left where he wanted me to go. And he's like, okay, you are going this way, but you're not going the way I want you to. And it's just like a constant reminder of always coming back into alignment with God. And he's never going to force you. He's going to tell you the way, and you get to choose to come back into alignment. You get to choose to say yes every single time. And so this is kind of, I feel like this podcast episode is really just to remind you guys to come back into alignment with God's will for you. Look at the different areas of your life. Where have you taken a left when he said go this way? Where have you taken a right when he said go this way? Where is he rerouting you and you are pushing back, saying no, saying 99% yes, but not the full yes? Just like take a self-evaluation. I just want you guys to ask yourself that. And so anyway, I just feel a lot more like myself. I feel like the past 2 months, I've just felt like this kind of like this pressure of like social media and mainly my podcast, like the number one thing that he wants me to do. I felt kind of like the pressure and the weight. So I knew that something was like amiss. Is that the right word? Something was out of alignment. I just knew, I could feel it. And it wasn't until like a week ago, I was like, oh, this is it. This is it. And so again, I just feel so much relief, so much peace. I'm so excited for everything that God has for, not just for me and my business, my life, but for honestly everyone who is in my audience, anyone who listens to this podcast, watches the videos on YouTube, like just anyone who is going to be impacted. I'm so expectant and just so excited for everything that God has. And with that, I'll see you on the next episode. I run a community called the Overflow Collective. This is a space for women in business, ministry, or influence who have a deep desire to stop the striving, stop the hustle, stop the burnout, and step into surrender and experiencing just more alignment, consistent alignment with God, so they can pour from that overflow of peace and joy and truth and freedom that they find in Christ to make an impact on the very people that God has called them to. If that is you, you can learn more about the Overflow Collective with any of the links in the podcast show notes or underneath this YouTube video description.